everyone. All right, I'm going to go over what we did today. Today is October the 19th, 2020. And so right on the stream, you can go and you can click on the agenda. And when that opens up, that tells everything that we did today on Monday. So if you scroll down, you see Monday is all in red. So first we did our morning meeting, we had our movement, and we read the story Rain Before Rainbows. In math today, we got introduced to our new unit on decimals. So let me pull up what we did. All right, so the big idea that I wanted everybody to get today is that fractions and decimals, when we're talking about these tenths, and later on we'll get into hundredths, we're talking about the exact same thing. They just look differently. So we reviewed. So if we see 3 parts out of 10, we know that's 3 tenths. 4 parts would be 4 tenths. 8 parts would be 8 tenths. 5 tenths. 9 tenths. So if we stop and we think, what do all these fractions have in common? They all have 10 parts. So this one has 10 parts, this one has 10 parts. Even though the wholes are different shapes, they all have those 10 parts. So it says, how can we write a tenth fraction as a decimal? So it says, let's start with our first shape. So we said that this shape was showing 3 tenths. So 1 tenth, 2 tenths, 3 tenths. 3 tenths written like this is how we practice with the fractional form. Now we're transferring to decimals. So this is the way that we write it as a decimal point. So 0.3. So 3 tenths written as a fraction is the same as 3 tenths written as a decimal. This dot right here is called the decimal point. It's what separates the whole numbers from our fractions or decimals. This was our second one. We said that it was 4 tenths. So here's how you write it as a fraction. Here's how you would write that as a decimal. So notice the tenths is, and I'm saying tenths with that snake sound at the end. That tenths place is right here, just to the right of the decimal point. 8 tenths would be written like this, 0.8. So 8 tenths is equal to 8 tenths. 5 tenths, you can see 0.5. Notice all of these tenths, whatever amount is shaded, that number is written directly to the right of the decimal point. 9 tenths, 0.9. All right, so it says, I wonder what all those zeros mean. So if the decimal point separates the wholes from the fractions and decimals, then that means on one side you're going to have your whole numbers, and on the other side you're going to have your decimals. So those decimal points, it says it's all about place value. So the decimal separates, like we said, the whole number. So everything to the left of the decimal place, that's called a whole number. And everything to the right, those are our fractions, those are our decimals. Okay, so it separates. It's like if you drew a line down the middle, everything to the left is a whole, everything to the right, those are our fractions or our decimals. All right, so we stopped there, and then we took some notes and we practiced. So let me bring up a whiteboard. So we took some notes. We titled our paper Tenths. And we had, at the top, we had, this is our ones place. We have our decimal point, and then we have our tenths. So again, notice you have the decimal point, and directly to the right is your tenths. So if we had, let me clear all this. So if we had the fraction 8 tenths, I see that 10, meaning I'm talking about when I say it, you can even hear 8 tenths. So the tenths, again, if we have our place value chart, we have, if we're 8/10, we're not at a whole number yet. We're close, but we're not there yet. It's still a fraction of a whole. So we have 0 wholes, and this tenths, remember, this is the ones place value, and this is the tenths place value. So when I go to write 8/10, I'm going to put 0 wholes, so 0 and 8/10. Okay. When I go, let me erase this. If I were to try another one, I could write 3/10, and this would be 0 and 3/10, so 0.3. If I were to do 5/10, get rid of these. 5/10 as a fraction looks like this, 5/10, 5/10. Same thing, I'm going to take this place value, the tenths place value, I'm going to put a 5 there, and now I have 5/10. We can also write this out as 5/10. So be very careful. This is tenths. Notice it has the 10, but we're adding this THS. And this, if we have that THS, again, we're talking about the number directly to the right. Okay, so let's look at some examples. This is something that came up today that were some misconceptions. All right, so if I had these 3 different numbers and I wanted to find the one that was in the tenths place, then I'm going to look for the 5 that is in that place value column. Again, we're looking at, if here's our decimal point, we're looking to the right. So that one has a 0, so that's not it. This one is 5 ones, so this 5 is in the wrong spot, so that's not true. Here, we're going to talk about this more on a Wednesday, but this 5 is in what's called the hundredths place. Remember, the one that we're looking for is directly to the right, the tenths. So this has a 4, so that's not correct. This one, if I'm at my decimal point and I look directly to the right, I see that 5. So this is the one that shows 5/10. All right. So that was our lesson today. Students, for their independent work, they went to Go Math page 43. They completed that assignment and they uploaded it. And then they also did their math daily review. And both of these things were in Seesaw. Then in reading today, we were hanging out in Seesaw quite a bit. So let me head over to Seesaw. All right, so in the activities, it was called, let me see here. All right, informational text is what we were looking at. So that one is, if you scroll down. All right, this one right here, whole group finding text structure. So let me pull up mine that I worked on. All right, so this was the first one that we did. We looked, let me zoom in for you. We looked at this first paragraph. We're only doing one a day. And so this first one, well, first the direction says we're going to read each paragraph. We're going to highlight the keywords that we find. We're going to determine the text structure and the choices that we have. So when authors write an informational text, they can do it in different ways. Sometimes they write in sequence, cause and effect, compare and contrast, description, and problem and solution. So these are different options that you might find. And each one has keywords that kind of signal to you what type of writing it is. And so when you identify, like for example, we identified the first one as a sequence, when you see those transition words like first, then, after that, finally, those signal words or those keywords, they tell me that they're telling me steps in order of how I need to do something. So this one, it's all about how to make scrambled eggs. So anytime you have a recipe that you're following the directions for, the sequence of events or the order that you need to do things, the steps, is super important because if you're not following the directions in the correct order, your cake or your eggs or whatever you're making is not going to turn out correct. So it says to make scrambled eggs, you need a few eggs, milk, salt, and pepper. First, crack 3 to 4 eggs in a bowl. Then add a tablespoon of milk and salt and pepper. After that, pour the egg mixture into an oiled pan over medium heat, and finally, cook and stir the eggs until they are fluffy. So again, these steps tell me the order that I need to do something in. So then students went here to page 2. So that's all we did on the first page. Again, we're going to do the others on another day. We went to page 2, and here are some keywords that we talk about that went with sequencing and ordering. And students picked something. So some of them picked how to make something. Some of them picked how to do a certain game. They had free choice, and they gave me steps of how to do whatever it was. And the thing that I told them I was looking for is, do they have those keywords that tell me as a reader that they are showing that sequence of events? So that first, next, and so on. All right, so that's what we did in reading. And then students had, so let me draft this again. The other thing that they did was in activities. Let me find it. All right, they did this assignment called Name That Structure. So the directions are that they're going to read a passage, and they need to record themselves reading the text. Then they're going to go through and they're going to circle which type is it. So they have to read and record. So they're going to use the tools in Seesaw to record so I can hear them read. And then they're going to choose, is it cause and effect, compare and contrast, sequencing, problem and solution, or description. So they're going to look for those keywords and decide. So there's 2 pages for each day. So today I needed the recording of butterflies and moths. And then I needed the recording about the life of a genius, talking about Stephen Hawking. So once they did that, they should have it drafted. Then, all right, in writing today, we started off with fast focus. So let me pull up that. All right, so in fast focus, we talked about the superlative form. So superlatives, when you're comparing 2 or more things and you're talking about something that's the most, then you change the word to show that, okay, like for example, silly, somebody might be silly, but if somebody is if they're super out of everybody, like they're the most silly, you would say that they're the silliest. All right, so wide turns into widest, lonely, loneliest, big turns into biggest, happy, happiest, and difficult, most difficult. So difficultest is not a word, so you tag that most onto the beginning. So this is superlative, the ones that are like out of all, like this is the top. All right, next we talked about words that don't belong. So a lot of these had pronouns that were repeats. So we talked about the importance of having one, but not both. So you're circling a word that does not belong. So the hammers and nails, they are in the garage. You don't say hammer. The they that they're talking about is the hammers and nails. So you're either going to say the hammers and nails are in the garage, or they are in the garage. You don't need hammers and nails and they. Same thing here. You've got 2 people you're talking about, and then you say we right after. That's a repeat. Same thing here. Bicep, it is larger. That doesn't make sense. You either say it is larger than my brain, or you say my bicep is larger than my brain. Never buy no ice cream. Okay, that sounds silly. If it sounds silly, don't write it. Never buy ice cream. Or Actually, no doesn't fit if you never buy ice cream at his store. That's all you need. Then we did page 2. We insert a comma. So we talked about these pauses here. So after you say Aunt Sally, comma, how old were you when you married Uncle Bob? And then here, this one, we've got our name at the end. Do you understand what I'm saying to you, Carlos? So you can hear that pause in there. Same thing with this one. Falcons, comma, you'll never win this game with a poor attitude. So putting that comma in there causes us to pause after or before those names. All right, underline the verb that completes the sentence. So again, we've talked about how the importance of saying these out loud and listening to how they sound. If you read them and you hear them, you can almost right away find your answer because one of them sounds really silly. So again, if it's sounding silly and you don't hear people talk like that or you don't talk like that, please don't use it. So it says the party start immediately. The party starts immediately after recess. They is the easiest types. They are the easiest types of shells to find on the beach. The worker wear gloves. The worker wears gloves to protect his hands. The dancers has special shoes to wear. The dancers have special shoes to wear. So this one has several more pages, so go ahead and hit draft on that, and we're going to continue that throughout the week. So that was what we practiced first. Then we went to opinion writing, and with this one, pull up mine. With this one, we have our test on Wednesday and Thursday, so we've been talking about just the different parts and what needs to be included in the different parts. So everybody's writing is going to have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. And so OREO is an acronym that you can use to kind of plan out. And if you notice here, it doesn't all the way spell out OREO because this one has 2 reasons and examples. So they put the R and the E on here twice to show. But if you remember that O starts with your opinion, so you're sharing your opinion. R, you give your reason. E, you give your example. And then O, you restate that opinion again. OREO can help you remember the order that things need to go. And then we should have at least 2 to 3 reasons that support whatever we're talking about. And so that's why, again, they have the RE and then the RE. So here you've got your introduction where you're going to state your opinion. Your body, again, is where you give your reasons and your examples that support. Your conclusion, you're restating. So you're not saying it the exact same way, you're restating your opinion. Then we looked at some different starters, transition words, things that we can do with our conclusion, different opinion types of things that like clue words and stuff like that. So we went through this list and we talked about some that we liked. We talked about having those go-tos. So like every time you write a conclusion, if you have something that you really like, a phrase that you really like in opinion writing, I like to start my conclusions off with, as you can see, and then, let's say I gave the example in class about dogs being better than, or which one's better, dogs or cats. So I was saying dogs. So as you can see, dogs are better than cats for all these reasons and more. So that's kind of like a go-to. Every time I write a conclusion, that's most often how I start. So we went ahead and we went through and we found some different things that we liked and highlighted. And I told the kids they could write them down to help them remember. And then we looked at some of the prompts. So here, these are prompts that they've used in previous years. And so we talked about how even though all 3 of these are different, they all start off with that read, that think, and that write. The write is the most important part here. This is the part that they're writing about. And so this is the part that they're going to be responding to. So we talked about those for a little bit. And then we went to lunch and recess. There's some GoNoodle. GoNoodle is you can make a free account with it, and so I've included some links. These are indoor recess things, so they're a little bit longer than the ones that we do in our morning meeting. And so if you want to get some activity in while you're inside, these are fun to do. All right, science. We watched a video today of Mr. Jared. And we talked about, we've been talking about weathering, erosion, deposition, and we talked about how the importance of, okay, so we learned about erosion. We learned about how erosion is, once we've got that broken down rock or that soil, how erosion is what takes it from one place to another. So it could be done through water, wind, or ice, but something is going to make those pieces of sediment or that soil move from one place to another. Okay, it could be washed away with water. It could be taken, think about a glacier. It could be carried with it through with ice. It could be blown from one place to another with wind. So one of those things, wind, water, ice, or a combination, is going to move that rock, move that soil from one place to another. So we talked about some implications of that. We were talking about, we kind of backed up a little bit, and we had a conversation about the importance of soil, how people depend on soil, how, things that we use it in real life, and so on. And we were talking about farmers and talking about how, if I've got a farm, is erosion a good thing for me or a bad thing? And so we were talking about that. And so this gives an example of some things, how erosion can happen easier with some circumstances other than others. So he has 3 different containers, and so we added that to our notebook. We drew each one, and then we labeled that the first one has just soil only. The second one has soil, but it has dead leaves on top. And then the last one has soil, but it's got grass planted in it. And so he's going to pour some water in. And so this part down here on the bottom is where the water is going to drain out. So we made some predictions about what that water is going to look like. And so the top part was predictions, and then the bottom part, we drew what actually happened. So let's go ahead and watch and see what happens as he pours water into each of these 3 things here.
Hi, I'm Jared. Welcome to Fun Science Demos. The big idea today is erosion and how water has the power to shape our land. But we don't want the water to shape our land too much, because we need that soil to grow plants. We use those plants for food, and animals use those plants for food. So what you see in front of me are 3 different types of land. This first type is just bare soil. It's just soil. This next type has dead leaves on top. And the third type has plants growing in the soil. This may not look too exciting right now, but when it rains, that water has the power to change the land. And we're going to make it rain to see what that water is going to do to our land. So we cut the top off of 3 plastic bottles, and we put the same soil in each of those 3 bottles. All of these bottles have the same soil. We covered this soil with dead leaves, and we grew some plants in this bottle. We've also used other plastic bottles to catch the water that's going to come out of these when we pour it into the bottle. We want to pour water into each bottle and see what happens. Does that water have the power to change the land? What do you think's going to happen when we pour water into this bottle and it comes out into the cup? Will it be any different from the water we pour into this bottle as it comes into the cup? And will this one be any different when we pour water into this bottle and it comes out into this cup? So I'm going to slowly pour water in. You're going to see the water level rise, and we'll see what happens with our soil. We'll keep it coming. And now it's coming out. Take a look at the bottle we used to catch the water. Well, what do you notice? Well, it's cloudy. So why is it cloudy? That's because all the dirt and the soil from our bottle was washed into the cup. The water had the power to actually take the dirt and the soil with it out of the bottle and into the cup. The water.
All right, so in our example, underneath our prediction, we drew what actually happened. So in this one, we added quite a bit of soil. All right, let's see what happens to the next one.
Moved the soil. It shaped the soil. So now I'm going to pour about the same amount of water into the next bottle. What do you think is going to happen? The water that we catch, will it be just as dirty? Will it be less dirty? Will we even be able to see a difference? Well, let's pour the water and find out. Here we go. So I'm pouring the water in. Making it rain. Adding water to our bottle. I can see the leaves floating to the top. Do we have any overflow? Yes, we do. Stop the rain and see what we have. So we've zoomed in so you can compare the two. This one has a lot of the soil in the container. This one just has a little bit of the particles, a little bit of the soil in that water. So why do you think this container is a little bit cleaner? Well, what's different between the two? Well, this one had leaves, dead leaves on top. And I think most of these dead leaves helped protect the soil underneath from moving with the water. So what do you think is going to happen with our third container? We have plants growing in the soil. What's going to happen when we add water and make it rain in this container? All right, here we go. Let's add the water. About the same amount. Pouring the water in. What do you think's going to happen here? Add a little bit more. It's coming out. We're going to stop pouring and see if we can compare what we see coming out. The water coming out of this container looks a whole lot cleaner than this one and a little bit cleaner than this one. So the question is why? Why is this water cleaner? I poured about the same amount of water into each container of soil. This one looks really clean. Well, to answer the question why, we have to zoom in and take a closer look at what's really going on here. So now we're all set to take a closer look at why the water coming out of this bottle was so clean and clear compared to the others. To do that, I'm going to actually lift these plants out of this bottle and let's see what happens. Well, what I notice right away is what comes along with all of the plants. Well, the soil is actually coming out too. When I flip it over, I think you'll be able to see why. So we've zoomed in so we can see what's going on here. Why is this soil staying together? Why is it staying in place? Well, you can see the roots from our plants grew into the soil. And almost like little fingers, those roots are holding the soil together. So when it rains, the roots keep the soil from washing away. The roots of the plant, that's what keeps the water from eroding the soil. Besides holding the soil together and in place, roots do another amazing thing. To show you that, I'm going to squeeze this and I want you to watch what happens. Where did all that water come from? Well, that came from when we made it rain on our soil. The roots of the plants helped hold that water in. plant roots actually go deep into the soil, and this model is going to help us see how deep they can go. We're going to zoom in and see if we can see those really tiny plant roots that we have growing in our soil. We've zoomed in now so you can see these tiny roots in action. I'm going to point them out, and they actually extend from the plant all the way down to the bottom of our soil. I'll point out some of the bigger ones. They grow down into the soil. And think about what they're doing. They're holding that soil in place. All of these tiny roots getting nutrients from the soil, but they're also helping the soil out. Plants do an amazing job at keeping erosion from washing away too much soil. We need that soil. We depend on that soil to grow plants, and animals depend on that soil to grow plants. If you want to learn more about plants and soil and erosion.
All right, so again, in our science notebook, we put in there what we saw, and then we wrote down some predictions, and then what actually happened. And then we hopped over to Seesaw, and there's an activity in here that you can see that video right here, erosion speaking activity. And so it says, after you watch the video, you're going to go look at the photos. So, no.
Hi, I'm Jared. Welcome to.
Hold on, Jared. We already watched you. All right, let me add a response here so it can show you. So you have the 3 photos, and so if you view the instructions here, it says you're going to describe what's happening in each of the pictures. You're using your academic vocabulary, you're describing them, you're modeling like how he did, and you're explaining what you saw happened and why you think those things happened, why we got 3 different results with these 3. So if you want to take notes on here, that's fine. You don't have to. Some students wrote down, they used the text, and then they used the record to share their notes that they had. So students were to turn that in today. And then, so that was science. So let me get out of some of these things here. Leave that. We're done with that. All right, so then we got into social studies. And social studies, we talked about, let me open this. All right, so we talked about Spanish conquistadors. So here, let me open the whole thing. All right, so several places in Europe, they were sending people over to explore this new land that they discovered, and so people were coming over for all different reasons. And so this article right here was just talking about some of the things that they would have, that they would wear. So these are people from Spain, and so it talks about the different things that they would wear. So here you can see the buckler, the sword, they had crossbows, the breastplate here. And so I'll leave this up so you can read that. You can go ahead and hit pause. All right, so it's talking about the things that the conquistadors would have. And then we went over and we did in Google Classroom, classwork. You have here your social studies week 10. And so we went to Monday. And we read the article. You can click this and push play, or you can read it yourself. It's called The New World. It says, which man did not reach Texas? So we chose 3 of these did that the article describes, 1 did not. So you're going to choose the one that did not. We talked about the metal that Spain was especially looking for. And then we talked about, or this one is talking about the other countries that were competing for the land in the New World. So again, you click on here, and this will be for Monday. And then after that, you just exit out, and we'll finish by Friday. So this has one, here's Tuesday and so on. So we just did Monday today. And then for our enrichment and intervention time, we practiced some things that we learned today with decimals. So if you go to Google Classroom, you can see that there is a link on here for a game called Quizzes. And so while students were doing that, I was kind of checking their progress on how they were doing. And ones that were struggling a bit, we stopped and we talked about it, and they were encouraged to try again. So you can try this assignment as many times until you're happy with your score. And it's really just practicing that placement of that tenths. So if you remember that the tenths is to the right of the decimal point, you should be very successful with that activity. And then today we had PE. Students told me that they were having trouble getting into the link. I had several messages about it. I cannot see anything that has to do with specials. I can only see classes that I'm the teacher of. So if you have a problem with one of the links for specials, any problem that you can't get in or anything like that, I don't usually, because while you guys are at specials, I don't usually see your messages until much later in the day, because Ms. Snyder has conferences or I have planning time with my team to where we're working on the curriculum for the next week. And then I have to go to bus duty and help all the kids get onto the bus. So by the time I see your message, the day is over pretty much. So there's not really anything that I can do, unfortunately. I wish I could help, but like I said, I'm not able to help with a class that I don't teach. So you really need to reach out if you guys had trouble with PE. You really need to reach out to the PE teachers, because that's their link. It's not Miss Snyder's. So I apologize again that I couldn't help with that, but make sure you are reaching out to those either coaches or music teachers or the STEM teacher, anything like that. So notice on here, we did have, with kids phasing in, they had to make some adjustments to the schedule. So we have PE, music, PE, STEAM, and then this week is a red week. So we go to PE on Friday. So take note. I don't know if you have a schedule at home or anything, but take note of the change that you see here. All right, and that was everything that we did this Monday. Most of the activities were drafted. The things that were turned in was the Go Math, page 43, the science erosion activity that you did on Seesaw, and then the quizzes that was here on Google Classroom. All right, hope you had a great day. Thank you.